everybody again, the symptoms of carpal tunnel syndrome include numbness, tingling, pain, especially at night, especially at nighttime, a burning sensation, and also, interestingly, a loss of ability to sweat. So if it's 90 degrees and your hands are burning and you notice they're not sweating, you may be having some symptoms of carpal tunnel. Now, a lot of people ask me, wait a minute, how can carpal tunnel cause a lack of ability to sweat? Well, think about it. The nerves trigger the sweat glands to activate. Nerves send signals to sweat glands. If the nerve's not working properly, that signal can get disrupted. That's why your hands might not sweat. So you may have dry hands if you have carpal tunnel syndrome. Now, a lot of people ask me, how common are these musculoskeletal disorders? How common are they? Well, they affect about 7% of the population and account for about 19% of all hospital stays. That's a significant number. Now, in the work environment, what I like to remind everyone is 62% of all work-related illnesses are due to some type of musculoskeletal disorder, musculoskeletal trauma. That number doesn't even include back injuries. So according to our government, a government agency called NIOSH, the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, to be exact, NIOSH says that this is a significant problem. These repeat traumas, these musculoskeletal disorders are a significant problem. In fact, the average lower back injury, if we start to throw those in, are very expensive. The average lower back injury is about $9,000 per case. That, folks, does not include anything other than going to the doctor or the chiropractor, maybe getting some adjustments from your chiropractor, maybe getting some pain relief from your physician. It's not including back surgery. If you are unfortunate enough to have back surgery, anybody here have to have back surgery? Anybody had that? Oh my goodness. How did it feel?
Not too good.
Not too good, yeah. You wouldn't want anybody else to have that, would you?
No.
Not a fun feeling, yeah. The average cost of a back surgery case is about $40,000. That depends on the area. I was in another location about a week ago, and the guy said, mine cost $100,000. So, all in all, back injuries cost Americans about $16 billion a year. $16 billion. That's a significant amount of money. That's why we want to talk about this. We not only want to prevent the pain, the physical pain of these injuries, but also the pain to our wallets, right? We don't want to have that pain either. That's another type. So we want to talk about prevention. Now, first of all, I want to talk about preventing back injuries. In order to understand back injury prevention, you got to understand why they occur so often. And a lot of people say, why is it usually the lower back? Why the lower back? Well, here's why. You guys remember when you were kids? Of course, Bethany, you're still a kid, I know. But some of you guys remember the teeter-totter on the playground? Remember that? Some of you may have called it the seesaw. People remember that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, the seesaw. For those who are too young to remember the seesaw, I mean, it was a Bethany's smiling. It was a board, if you will, long board, and you put one kid on this side, one kid on this side, and they would bounce up and down, right? Of course, if you were at my school, you put one kid here, and then the other kid jumped here, and you would launch them into the air, right? Yeah, I like to do that. But we had the teeter-totter, and it would go up and down. Now, notice there's a pivot point right in the middle. There's a pivot point. If you take away that pivot point, what do you have? What do you have?
A board.
Just a board, a flat board. You don't have a teeter-totter. There's no teeter. Well, if you think about it, your back is like a teeter-totter. You are teetering back, forth, back and forth, and here in your lower back is that pivot point. That pivot point. That pivot point on this diagram, if you'll see, is called the L5S1 region. That little vertebrae in your back is usually, on most people, their little pivot point. That's why most of the time when somebody injures their back, it's going to be right there in that spot. It's usually right there in their pivot point. That's why lower back pain is so common. Now, when are you at risk of incurring one of these lower back injuries? You are at risk if you lift in awkward postures. And we're not talking just at work, but also at home, if you lift in awkward postures. Now, what I mean by awkward postures are things like twisting, bending, fixed position, all of these things put you a little bit more at risk. If you lift loads above your shoulders or below your knees, that puts you a little bit more at risk. If you lift unbalanced loads or loads without good hand grips or you can't get a good handle on it, that puts you a little bit more at risk. If you push or pull heavy loads, that puts you a little bit more at risk. Now let me explain that one to you. I use that term heavy load. What's a heavy load? How many pounds? What do you think, Linda? How many pounds? Just take a guess. What's heavy load to you?
Probably 20 pounds.
20 pounds to you. Bethany, how many?
I'd say about 30.
30? Leslie?
50.
50, okay. We got a difference of opinion here. And obviously, it's going to depend on the person lifting the weight, correct? Okay. For a little wimpy thing like me, 30 pounds is heavy. For Jay in the back there, it's going to be about 100 pounds. But everyone is different. Everyone is different. But here's the thing. Our government, through the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, that NIOSH group, they did a study of occupational injuries. And they said this: most of the time when somebody has an occupational injury, for example, has a back injury, it's because they were trying to lift 50 pounds or more. 50 pounds or more. That's what they consider a heavy weight. Now, they're not saying don't lift 50 pounds ever. I want that to be the stop and think point. And I want that to be at least your stop and think point. You might lower that down. But 50 pounds is where you want to stop and think, gee, should I lift this or not? Is this going to be too heavy for me? What's the best way to get this from point A to point B? Should I get a dolly? Should I get somebody else to help me? Should I get a forklift if I'm in the work environment? Should I get a crane or a hoist if I'm in the work environment? Those kind of things are what you want to think about in order to help prevent one of these injuries. So before you go to move a heavy weight, stop and think. Stop and think. That's the message there. Another thing is if you lift loads in cramped spaces, that puts you a little bit more at risk. Now, why do you think that would be? Lifting something in a cramped space. Why do you think that would be a risk factor? I think that would increase your risk.
You can't naturally move the way your body wants to.
Absolutely. You can't get a naturally good posture, can you? Absolutely. Yeah. That's going to put you a little bit more at risk. We'll talk about body posture later. And another thing is if you lift on slippery or uneven floors. Anybody here ever lifted on a slippery floor? No. All right. Anybody ever shovel snow? You got some slippery footing there, don't you? Yes, this past winter was a great example. A little too much of it. Yeah, that puts you a little bit more at risk. So now, you guys tell me, high-risk posture or low-risk posture? What do you say? High-risk posture. Why do you think it's high-risk?
It's twisted.
He is twisting, isn't he? Yes, he's doing the twist and shout. The twist and shout. So let's talk a little bit more about risk factors. We already said that frequent repetitions put you a little bit more at risk, and that heavy lifting, and how many pounds is a heavy weight, folks?
Over 50.
50 pounds. Let's hear it. 50 pounds. One more time. 50 pounds. See, I want you to remember something when you walk out of this classroom. You're going to remember, that crazy woman made me say 50 pounds 50 times. You're going to remember that. You're going to remember it. 50 pounds. And here's another good one for you. No resting of muscles between tasks. No resting of muscles between tasks. You guys, have you ever watched these bodybuilders on TV when they go work out and see what they do? You ever seen what they do? They go into the gym. And they pick up a weight, and they lift that weight 8, 10, 12 times, and then they set it down, and they step away, and they go take a little break for 1 or 2 minutes, get a little drink of water, or energy drink, or power bar. Then they'll go back, and they'll pick up a weight again, and they'll lift it 8, 10, 12 times, and they'll set it down, then they'll take another 1, 2, no more than a 5-minute break. Then they'll go back and do it again. Why are they taking that little 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-minute break? Why do they do that? Why?
Prevent muscle fatigue.
Prevent muscle fatigue. Yes. You know, if you think about it, if they just continuously lifted, they would eventually be breaking down the very muscles that they're trying to build up, wouldn't they? They'd be doing the opposite of what they're trying to achieve. So you need to give yourself a little break. Now, I'm not talking about going out to the car and taking a nap for an hour, okay? Especially if you're on the job. You don't want to do that. People at work always love it whenever I say, oh wait, yeah, look, the training lady told me I needed to take a break. I gotta go. That's not what the training lady said, okay? A break is no more than 5 minutes. A break could be simply stepping away from your chair. Let's try it. Stand up. Stand up. And take a little stretch. Take a stretch. Good. All right. And one more. Good. Take a couple stretches. And then let's flex those hands again. Around, flex the hands. Back and down. Back and down. Good. You may sit down. That's all I'm talking about. It doesn't have to be 2 hours or a hibernation period, all right? Just a brief break.